Welcome back to Bump Love, Dad Edition. On the show, we are having three daddies, and I would like to start by introducing them. At the end, we have Richard Kusiima, founder and CEO of Sync Sales. He's a professional coach, business consultant, mentor, and team and thought leader. We have Mayanja Kawuma, currently the head of primary at the North Green Kampala School. He's a devout Christian, he loves God, and he is also a children's pastor. Last but not least, Haji Musa Sekamatte, who is the principal medical epidemiologist at Ministry of Health. Welcome to the show, gentlemen. So today we would like to speak about legacy, the meaning of it and the impact, and the fact that some of us may or may not leave one behind. The first question today will be, what do you define legacy as?
Probably before I answer that, you may leave or leave none. Either way, you leave a legacy.
Okay.
Legacy to me is simply a footprint that you leave that others may follow or learn from it. It can be put in two bits or two parts: traditional legacy or cultural legacy, which is more passed on from generation to generation. Okay. Our grandparents passed on to our parents, and we are passing on to our children. I give so many examples, but one of them is, praying with your father. My grandfather used to pray with the family daily. Happens to my father as well. Would call us in the sitting room every evening to pray. Mm-hmm. And I'm doing the same with my children. That's the traditional, that's the legacy that my great ancestors left behind.
True.
But just even through the language that we speak, the tribes that we have, it's a belonging. It's good for our children to know that we belong to a greater call, that
True.
They belong somewhere. That's the legacy, and that's from generation to generation.
Mm-hmm.
But there's also a personal legacy, where you as a person live a life and your actions actually speak louder, that others will yearn to be like you, look like you, move in your footsteps.
True.
Okay? In other words, I would say that the inheritance, or the greatest inheritance we leave behind, is the wisdom, the actions that we do, and the assurance of love that we transfer to our children. Yeah. That is really important. Mm-hmm. So I would conclude probably by saying that legacy is intertwined with inheritance.
Thank you very much for this opportunity to speak to you. Picking a leaf from where my friend has left it, I would also think that I would first of all break the ice and differentiate between legacy and inheritance. Okay. And in my opinion, inheritance is something that, when you're gone away tomorrow, it's something that you leave with someone. But now legacy, on the other side, is something that you leave in someone. Okay. So a legacy is one thing that points out, that has points that are linked to the cores of value, character, and faith. And if you ask me that what is that you think you'd pull out and leave out for the children, I would still look at the admiration of commitment in terms of associations with character, making them have faith, but most importantly also looking at the core values of who they are, what they stand for. He has just been talking about prayer and all these other things. So to me, I think I would break the ice and get into that.
Wow. Okay, so that's interesting because I've been picking up a couple of things, as a couple of ideas have been shared. And I like what you said about, okay, and also to deconstruct what most people believe legacy is right now. They believe it's something that I as an individual must strive towards attaining, so that when I'm gone, hopefully I'll be remembered. There's that element of hopefully. Yes. But like you've heard, it's not about hope. Whether you leave a legacy, or whether you believe you leave a legacy or not, you're actually leaving a legacy. And the legacy you're leaving is not even your own. There is a transcendent spirit of fatherhood, or a paternal spirit. And I'll give an example. My son asked me a question, my 6-year-old. He asked me a question, and he can throw you questions that can, leave you, at a loss of words. So he asked me, Daddy, where did you learn how to do that? There's something I did. And he said, where did you learn how to do that? I said, my father. I learned it from my father. Yeah. And I'll tell you, I learned something out of that question, because then he said, where did your father learn it from? And then we went on some stuff that couldn't end, because I told him he learned it from his father. Then where did his father learn it from? From his father's fathers, and on and on and on. So you find that right from our forefathers, there are things that have been passed on, okay? And they're passed on, not that they actually hand them over, but through observation, through exposure, through belief systems, such as prayer. We are able to adopt that, all right? In our living, we start to make our decisions and learn and possibly explore new areas, but we're just building up on certain, there's a spirit in us which is linked to a transcendent or eternal spirit. And when you go in the biblical sense, and I know Hajj is here, but I'll just refer to that space. In the biblical sense, for the Christians, that is the spirit of the Father. Yes. Okay? So when I live my life, for example, I will be imitating that spirit. Now, whether I imitate it right or wrong, that's a different conversation, but I'm imitating that spirit. And we see it even in the animals. You see the lions. Lions, live in a pride. There's a lion, the lionesses, and the cubs. But you will see the lionesses wake up to go and hunt. And there's a communication that will happen. The cubs will stay around to play. But later, you'll find that they'll start to train these cubs in the way they communicate. And when that cub or lion cub is 1 year old and you show up, it will eat you, because it believes it is a lion, and it hunts and it eats. So for me, the conversation or subject of legacy is not one that I can just have a conversation on in the now. It has to go back to an eternal space. Yes. Yeah, and for me, that's how the legacy is. So while I'm here, I'm doing the very best I can, with whatever strengths or weaknesses, to just imitate whatever I saw my fathers or forefathers do. Yeah, and to me, that is what my children now start to see. Yeah. And hopefully when they become parents, fathers, they also will be responsible in seeing how they can, carry that on and on and on.
True.
I also just wanted to, for purposes of us understanding, it can also be redefined and looked at from another angle of, fortune, trying to live wealth in terms of property, but also money. It can also be an association of legacy. So when you're gone, you leave behind some money for the people who are coming after you, or leaving out back some little bit of, let's say, property. But the most important thing is, like I was saying, understanding then what, after you've left all this fortune, after you've left all this property, after you've left all this wealth. Sometimes they will tell you that even before you put 6 feet under the ground, the children have already started saying, I think we need to sell off this property. But you see, children that have been brought up in the, looking at the cores of value, looking at the cores of commitment, looking at the cores of faith, looking at the cores of character, will certainly, look at things from a different lens, and certainly will have things done in the proper way. and the moment you have faith, it's being backed up by God, the religious component. It is also something that we would look out for, and it is part of what we call the paternal growth curve, where our children are looking at us as fathers, for example, as beings that are meant to provide security. True. When you're a father figure in a family, there's a sense of security that you give and you impart to the children. True. While the mothers are naturally nurturers, we need to associate our values to point out issues of faith and making sure that there's a lot of security that we give to our children. And yeah.
And you're very right. Actually, when you talk about the family, you see, it goes beyond the family to those around the family, and and that's why the name is key. Are you from the Kawuma family?
No.
The moment they mention that, there's something that comes with that name.
True.
Because you lived a life that was admired by many. You did things that impacted the community.
True.
And that's why it's important that we strive, okay, to spread the trends, okay, and ensure that our actions positively affect those around us.
True, true. Do you believe that in this bid to leave whether a legacy or an inheritance, is it possible that sometimes the line between provision and presence sometimes get blurred?
Yeah, certainly. I've had numerous discussions around this subject, and I've told people it's one thing to provide for your children, but it's also another thing for being in their life.
You have to be present.
So when I walk in, for example, in Capital Shoppers supermarket, and I fill the trolley with all these kinds of things, Skittles, crisps, name them, cornflakes, and then I walk back home with very huge grocery, packs. And then I just walk in, and then hey guys, come out, pick out all these things. And then they pick out all these things, and then I get in the house, off I go. Get in the bedroom, do whatever I want to do. I'm only called out to come and have a meal or dinner or tea or something.
Yes.
Now, that's not what defines being in the life of your children, but you've actually provided.
Yes.
But the moment you get in the house with these big, packs of grocery, you need to make them appreciate that it was such a difficult day, for example, and you had to spare, a little bit of the funds of the monies that you had. True. To make sure that you provided for them. You make them understand that it's not always a smooth road, and then you also talk about the day, how the day has been.
True.
And you will find them with very interesting questions. They're going to ask you, for example, Dad, I made this your busy schedule because you tell us you're very busy. How did you find time to get to Capital Shoppers to go and do,
Okay.
And that's where you now dive into giving them an explanation of how you've spent the day. And you will also learn that they have feelings as young adults.
True.
They're going to tell you what probably the house help has done, what their brother's done to them. And it's going to be very interesting. So while you're telling them, they are picking out something, but you're also picking out ideas from them. And this is going to bring out the other big component of trying to say you are in their lives.
True.
And you're providing as well.
True.
Yeah.
True.
Yeah.
I believe the balance is quite difficult, especially for all of us, including moms. But I think what is key is to catch those moments in their lives for them to know that daddy or mommy is always available in these times.
True.
Because the fact of the matter is that we need to make ends meet.
Yes.
Okay? And truth be told, we will work all our lives, but what's the purpose of it if we're going to lose our families? So it's drawing that line and making sure that you are in their lives at those opportune moments. It may not be every day. There are fathers who get home late, tired, sleep, wake up at 4 and move on. But it's key that the children are aware that daddy, whenever he's around, makes a huge difference. And of course, I know there are absentee parents who provide just to cover up for the missed times. That's not what I'm trying to say. You need to be there for them. If it's a situation of discipline, you're there. And the way you discipline is with love and understanding and kindness, and for them to know that whatever you're doing is for their own good. And you have these conversations with them. When it's time for discipline, it is discipline. If it's fun, it's fun. You give that guidance. It will not happen every day, but those moments and opportunities will avail themselves. So if you're a busy parent, make sure that those opportunities don't just pass you by. True. That you make use of them, and that will leave something upon them. Those are the memories or memoirs that you actually inscribe into them. They will always remember. Just like way I remember my father. My father was a very busy man. But my father, if it is time for school, he will be there. If you had done something wrong, he would call you and say, what did we talk about? A, B, C, D. Ah, okay. So what are the consequences? But daddy, you see, no, we are great, didn't we? Yes, daddy, but forgive me. Go bring the, the cane. And that was it. I never hated him for that. Now that I'm a grown-up man and a father, I totally understand. And so my boys are aware of that. Okay? So that is the walk you take in this, for you to be able to leave that legacy for your children.
Exciting. It's really exciting. When it comes to the conversation of especially parenting, and when you're looking at it in terms of your children, I should tell you, I lost my father when I was 11. Okay? So that alone kind of shifts how I look at parenting. All right? So when I hear, for example, the stories being told about fathers, some of those experiences, I did not have. And I will tell you for a fact, growing up, I've been the kind of person, they'll tell you, the guy is a bulldog, he's a stray dog, you don't tell me what to do, yeah? And so along the way, I had to clash with a couple of people, but then I had to learn how those experiences kind of impacted my life. Now, when I look at my children, and also talking about being present, because for me, when you talk of presence, I'm looking at state, okay? For example, you're here now, okay? And again, like I said, legacy, looking back at the eternal spirit. Yeah, when you look at the eternal spirit of our Father, in terms of the deity, you find that, the Bible will say God is here now, all right? It's referred to I am, and I am who, yesterday I am, today I am, tomorrow I am. It's talking about now, being present, and there's power in being present. So the way I now angulate that with my children is, I got to a point where it was no longer about work-life balance, because you cannot have work-life balance. It's impossible. You need to have wisdom, because the Bible says there's a time for everything. And when I work with young people, I also tell them, when you graduate from school, trust me, you're going to go through a phase where you don't have a job. Now, don't fret that you don't have a job, but do everything possible in that space, because you will look back and wish, when you get a job and you're too busy, you will look back and remember those times. So, as a parent, I need to understand that now is a time where I have a job, I have projects, and I'm extremely busy. And look, I need to run those projects, because if I don't, then something is going to happen and an income is going to stop coming in, and definitely the family is going to be affected. Then there will be times when I'm not that busy, then I'll give the family a lot of focus. So for me, it's about finding a harmony, not necessarily a balance. It's a harmony. For instance, if it's a weekend, all right, you don't have a lot of work to do. Come on, strike that harmony and spend more time with your family. And hopefully, during the week where you're too busy, and as parents, you pray that your children will understand. Because when we grow up, we then start to look back and we understand why our parents did what they did. So hopefully, your children will understand when they grow up. that, oh, I now see why daddy used to be this kind of person. And you know, having the mother and the father is amazing, because I'll give you an example. My wife, she's always present in terms of being with the children. I'm not. When it comes to a Monday, I'm out of there early and I'm back late. All right? But on the weekends, I will spend time with them. And then, so my boys are aware. When mommy is leaving, they'll ask her, where are you going? Because they are used to having her around. When I pick up, you know, a laptop and I move out, or I come home and I pick up a laptop, my sons will be like, Daddy, you're working? I said, yeah, I'm working. So it's also for me, it's what, from an early age, what I've decided to demonstrate to the children. And I want to demonstrate to them that, look, in life, you're going to have to work hard. Yeah? But also when I'm around, I'm observing. I want to see the energy or the state they're in and be able to come into that state at that moment, understand their frustration and be a part of it. So that for me is more important than if I sat home the whole day and I'm throwing kids around. I told a friend of mine who was on leave, he said, I've spent a lot of time with my kids. I said, let's unpack that. You spent a lot of time at home doing what? Okay? It's not about you sitting at home the whole day many times. It's about the experiences you're creating with these children when you're with them, even though that could mean once a week, all right? Twice a week, and how consistent those experiences are, because that's what they will remember. They won't remember you being with them a lot. They'll remember the kind of way you made them feel.
I also, I appreciate his submission, but also on the other side, when you flip the coin, the law of human nature, you know, that points out to science of bringing up children also.
Did you say you're a scientist?
Well, I am a scientist, an experienced one, and I'm also very proud to have served this country at different levels of, you know, trying to contain these diseases. You see, when you're bringing, you know, when you're doing parenting and upbringing of children, you need to strike a balance between the science itself, the genetics, but also, you know, the social and you know, subjects that are around. You know, when we talk about issues of personality, temperament, and so on, you must understand these young adults. Well, for me, I would carry them up, laugh with them, pinch, run around with them, and you know, I wouldn't be like my brother Ronald there saying that you've spent home doing what? For me, even if it took me 2-3 hours of carrying and, you know, playing around with them, I think that would settle their emotional, you know, development. Yeah. But also there's a way it brings up the connection between them and you as the parent, and more so as the father. I have seen a number of situations. My children go to Green Hill Academy. Mm-hmm. So in the morning when I drop them, it's actually me. I get to hold their hands, and then I walk with them. I actually get to hold their bags as well. And I take them up to class. Now, there's a time I was running in a very busy meeting, 7 a.m. meeting, and the Honorable Minister, my minister, was calling me, who's my boss. And you know, I had to chair the meeting because she was going to run late. And guess what? They tell me, I tell them, you guys, you need to take yourselves to class. And you know, they were saying, but daddy, you know, they gave all sorts of excuses. But you could see that they are trying to have a moment that is trying to disconnect from dad, but in a more painful way. But again, I could also read that they were saying, oh, I think dad is doing this probably for the first time, and we shouldn't take it as something that is going to be like that forever. And guess what? It's the young one who's telling the elder sister that, look here, we need to move, and then we let that go. But every time they get memories of such instances and such moments and such situations, there's a way that you know, brings up and strengthens the parenting kind of component.
The truth is that, you know, the experiences we create when we are with the children last and actually impact them for the future.
True.
My father would walk with us And up to now, I remember very well, vividly, how he would speak to the woman who was roasting maize, how calm he was with the person who had actually been aggressive to him,
Yes.
and how when he was driving, what would happen on the road. So he would make comments like, oh, don't worry, let them go, because it would waste a lot of time if you kept fighting with them.
Yes.
So those things have remained in me, in that even when I'm driving and I see one overtaking on the left and on the right, I stay in the lane. Why? Because I have my children, and my children need to learn that be patient. Don't do what others are doing. Okay? Those are the bits. Those are the experiences. The love that he's talking about, that you show them, is very, very important, because they live on that. And when they grow into adults, they have that in them. I think those experiences are quite important. It's very absurd if you see parents doing wrong things when they are with their children, because those are the future citizens that we have in the country.
Maybe before, because as we're sharing, there's a picture that's coming into play, and certain conversations in my head. Let me tell you something that's very profound. Seated right here, the four of us are children. Like, we have not grown up. All right? So down the road, whether you choose it to be a parent, for some they choose, they get married, they say, all right, let's have babies, all right? And sometimes they don't even know what they're talking about. Others, through the excitement of life, end up being mothers and fathers, all right? So, and I try to differentiate the space of, you are a parent, and you are being a father means you actually, are functioning. For those of you who are biological and are able to get a woman pregnant, I'll use the words, and she will give birth to a baby. So you fathered a child, you're a father. Parenting, on the other hand, is being able to walk with that child through scenarios, and sometimes create scenarios, but based on, like we said, the legacy, that the things you have seen, but also the knowledge you have come to acquire from the schools you've gone to, the experiences you've traveled, or the people you've been sharing with. Because, like, from this scenario, we are getting knowledge, we're getting information, so we're getting into formation, right? So when you look at myself, I'll give you an example for myself. And I'm a very vulnerable person, very vulnerable leader, vulnerable parent. The Bible says there shall be no condemnation. I don't condemn myself. So you find that as a parent, you have weaknesses, and you are aware of your own weaknesses. Now, on one hand, the parent doesn't want to demonstrate to the child that he has these weaknesses. And sometimes you can keep them at bay, but sometimes they come out in front of your children. Look, I tell people, relax. You are still a child. Maybe for some reason you were dealt a bad hand and you didn't grow up in the right space to be parented. And it's not to say that it's okay, but it's good to recognize it, because now when you recognize it, you know what you can be able to do about that. I've done a couple of mistakes before my sons, but my friend, I love these boys. They love me back. So you find that you're a child and you're raising a child. Okay, and then you'll find that eventually this child, by the way, is here sometimes to teach you. Because I've learned a lot of things from my children, reflecting on how they're engaging with me, and that has taught me to be a bit, relaxed and be like that child. They go out for what they want, they ask for what they need, and so if I don't tell them, no, don't talk to people like that, and I just understand where they're coming from, and I come into their state and we have a conversation, maybe it is me who's going to learn from that space.
True.
So when I look at parenting, and I share this a lot with my wife, I say, honey, these children sometimes are here to teach us.
True.
And now, because I have a 17-year-old, one time he sat and he told us about relationships. And he says, I don't understand you people. I see you guys relating, all of you relating. And we looked at each other and he had a point.
Sure.
All right? So sometimes we're here to learn from these young people. The 6-year-olds of today are on the tabs, and they know much more than we even knew at that time. Sure. So I always sit back and say, as I pass on a great spirit of, the great values and the nice things, but also how can I learn from this child? Because when the child turns 19, 20, that ceases to be really a child per se. They're an individual adult who are responsible for their lives, and sometimes the father-son relationship or father-daughter relationship shifts into some other kind of relationship. Yeah, and maybe you're learning from them, or maybe they're now supporting you.
True.
Yeah.
A legacy is not what is left tomorrow when you are gone. It was what you give, create, impact, and contribute today whilst you're here that has an effect even after you are gone. Do join us at the Kampala Serena, where they host brunch every Sunday from 12 to 4 p.m. It is 110,000 for adults and 65,000 for children between the age of 5 to 12. Do come and enjoy scrumptious meals made by international chefs with family and friends. Until next time, with love from Bump Love.